Good evening, Des Moines, Iowa. This is the Doc. Welcome to the Doc and Lefty program here on webcast1live.com, coming to you from the beautiful, lush, air-conditioned studios on the in the downtown Des Moines Skywalk area. I'm Lefty. This is Doc and Lefty, and with me, as always, is my larger-than-life cohort in evil, the good doctor, Dr. Pat Bertroche. Doc, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm not particularly evil. I'm just well-versed.
I called you my cohort in evil.
Well, I know.
I was extending this.
But don't include me with the liberals. I'm glad you finally understand that liberals are evil.
The discussions that you and I have would lead me to believe that if we founded our own Legion of Doom, you and I would have a tussle over who Dr. Doom was going to be. That's all I have to say.
Absolutely.
We had the Labor Day. How was your weekend?
It was pretty good. I got to spend it with some family, and it was nice, beautiful, good riding weather. Just going to warn all the riders out there, please pay attention to your speed. Because if you don't pay attention to your speed, you can do something silly, like get a ticket.
Oh, man.
Oh, I know. I had you on the phone. Blake. So.
I caved this weekend. I caved over this weekend and finally went to Prairie Meadows with my girlfriend.
Oh, really? That's really nice.
She loves going. She loves spending a few bucks playing some slot machines and maybe doing a little bit of blackjack. I don't play blackjack because I don't want to make everybody else at the table very angry. I don't know how to play very well. Yeah. But so we kind of, we had a couple of cocktails and we played a couple of games and we weren't spending a lot of money. And then we sat down at the roulette table and walked out $200 up. And because I'm not much of a gambler, I said $200, that's good enough for us. And we left and we actually took money from Prairie Meadows for the very first time, I think, ever. So it was a pretty good weekend all the way around.
Absolutely.
And but all sort of light stuff aside, I did want to make one point, and I wanted to pick your brain about it in this first segment. And I was thinking about that
first I have to find my brain.
Right. You have no idea this is coming because I thought of it on the drive over here from the office right before the show.
All right.
But you are familiar with the mental health commitment procedures in this state.
Yep.
You are aware that there are two, essentially. There's substance abuse and a finding of mental impairment. Mm-hmm. And you are also aware that those findings can come with a fairly severe, not penalty, but severe outcome, as in involuntary confinement for an indefinite amount of time.
Well,
you're aware it doesn't usually.
It can get
theoretically.
To that, yes. Theoretically, it could.
If you are a mentally impaired person, you never ever could. Theoretically, the way the law is, would never get out if you never got better.
No, and that's true.
Under a mental health hold, okay? And I'm not here today to debate the merits of that policy because there are some people who need that help. As part of my law practice, I do a lot of that kind of stuff where I am a respondent's attorney. If an application has been filed against you as a severely mentally impaired person, they appoint me as the attorney. I go down, try and negotiate something with the county attorney and the judge and my client, and work something out that hopefully is in the best interest of the client, because that's the overarching concern. I've had that because they want the person to get better. It's not a criminal thing. It's not punishment. It's about mental health. It's about getting that person better.
You bet.
Overall, Doc, how would you rate the mental health commitment procedures in Polk County, Marion, and the surrounding rural counties, Marion County, Warren County? What kind of grade overall would you give them?
I'd give it a solid C.
Solid C.
The reason is, in some ways, like Blake pointed out, it's really easy to get a committal.
Very easy.
And that is good news for those who truly need it. There are some people with no family that have mental health issues or have addiction issues that wind up homeless under the 2nd Street Bridge or the Court Street Viaduct. There's all kinds of bad things that can go on there. And these people then can get some help, and it helps get them into the system so that we can start treating it, hopefully get them back to being productive citizens, or at least not living under the bridge and creating a public health hazard, essentially. Now, I give it an F because ex-wives get mad at their husbands, as ex-husbands get mad at the wives, and next thing you know, they're sitting 48 hours over to Iowa Lutheran waiting for the judge to let them go. And
you can abuse it really, really easily. And it's not necessarily even a government thing, but I'm going to talk about the government here in a second, which I know that you'll love. It's not necessarily even it's a government system that's abused by private people sometimes. I wouldn't even say that it happens very often because judges are pretty good. They're pretty savvy about picking the good, the people who need it from the people who don't. They're usually pretty good about that. However, I got appointed on 2 cases here in the last week or so where the VA filed papers on 2 veterans who were being seen because they'd had and these aren't guys who are just out and about. These are long-term folks who are on their radar who get services from them for a long time because of schizoaffective and other serious mental health issues that if treated, you can live a perfectly normal life. You can have an apartment and do well and live off your benefits. And have a job. Yep. Exactly. It's not a death sentence. So I don't want to, but these guys, but it's also hard to keep people on their meds sometimes. They're not medication compliant a lot of the time. And that's where the VA steps in and for the most part does a good job. However, my last 2 cases, we had the doctor and the caseworker file papers on 2 veterans to get them committed, recommending inpatient hospitalization, which is by definition an indeterminate amount of time because you don't get out till you get better or until they're satisfied that you can leave. And then didn't want to take the 45-minute trip down to Knoxville to answer for it. And I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. The law says that the applicant, at least, the person who signs the application, has to be present unless the respondent, my client, is okay with waiving it. If you are going to lock a person up for a maximum of 5 days without a hearing, because that's what the law says, you can be held for 5 days without a judge to see you. Maximum 5 days. It's usually 2, but it's 5 days is the max. I'm sorry, you should look the court. You should look the court in the eye and look the respondent in the eye and testify under oath as to why that person needs to be held longer than that. Because there are people who beat their kids who get out, who bond out, and are just, pay $5,000 and you're back on the street.
Well, here's the other problem with that. Treatment, they don't get treatment unless they voluntarily want it. So they're down there in a locked cell. I mean, that's what it is. And with other people that are suffering from delusions and hallucinations, paranoia, aggression, violence, for 5 days without any treatment. Now they get food and clothing and housing and they're taken care of, but they don't get any treatment unless it's voluntary. And then at the end of the whole thing, guess who's stuck with the bill for this committal? It isn't the applicant. It's the person that got stuck there.
Yep. I'm saying
that is a good way to stop any kind of custody fight with your ex. And I probably see it twice a month in my office.
And if you are going, and I'm saying, if you're going to attempt to stick somebody with those kind of issues, with the bill, with a lack of treatment, the VA does a pretty decent job of treating people when they first get there, but it's a tough thing. I'm not trying to call the VA out on its sort of treatment regimen. You'd be able to speak to that better than me. What I'm saying is, from a due process perspective, if I have the potential of being locked up, the person accusing me of being mentally impaired needs to be there, needs to look me in the eye, and the fact that the VA twice now has gotten offended and has gotten its backup about doing what the law requires really irritates me. So I just need to get that off my chest.
Yeah, it's not a good situation overall, and I wish people would come up with a better system. But when we've tried to come up with a better system, NAMI and the National Alliance for Mentally Ill steps in and really makes it so it makes it even worse. And not that I'm against NAMI, I'm not, but sometimes they're a little misguided. We'll be back right after the break. What should we talk about? You want to talk about Syria or McWages?
I think that we probably have to, in honor Labor Day, we got to talk about the minimum wage.
Next. Yep. All right, we're going to hit McWages next. We'll be back right after break. Listen to Doc and Lefty on webcast1live.com. Thanks for tuning in.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. This is Lefty with Doc and Lefty, and we just had the Labor Day weekend. Really nice. I saw your Happy Labor Day post, and it was really heartwarming. And
Yes.
and I didn't want to kind of ruin the mood by pointing out that the only reason that we have a Labor Day is because Grover Cleveland, under pressure from the unions back in the 19th century,
Under pressure,
signed it into law. Well, it was a way to pacify the unions because he'd been engaging
because they're so aggressive.
not a lot
Because
of
you have to pacify them.
because the labor situation at the end of the 19th century was pretty awful, and the unions and Grover Cleveland had been elected to be a trust buster, didn't do enough trust busting, and so the unions were mad at him. As a bone, he tosses them Labor Day to kind of pacify him. Well, it didn't work. He didn't get renominated for the next presidential election, I think in 1896 or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, Labor Day is a holdover of the old labor movements from the 19th and early 20th centuries, and such as the weekend, such as paid holidays and vacations, and the minimum wage.
Hold on, we're gonna stop that right there. Now, in all fairness, I have to tell you, I responded to your Facebook post about the share show. Yes, I did. And Phaedra was a little bit concerned that it was unfair because you couldn't fight back. I told her I don't worry about you fighting back, but I did say, of course, Blake is wrong on the minimum wage and Republicans, and of course everything else. So that's my response. If you want to come back, it's just typical. Number two, not to tout somebody else, but John Stossel has a really good breakdown of the fallacies of the weekend. I think you're correct on the Labor Day and minimum wage, and how these things really weren't a result of union work, and that it's a modern myth that we have that doesn't stand up factually. So we'll agree to disagree on that one.
I would love if you got Mr. Stossel on the phone.
If I could
to
get
defend
him, he's got
your
it on
argument.
He's got a website, and he's got a show, and he does.
But anyway,
right
the minimum wage is sort of kind of the hot. It's an issue right now because there are a lot of fast food workers out east. I don't think it's really caught on here in the heartland, but mainly on the East Coast, maybe on the coasts, just in general. That are protesting and had sort of an informal strike. I mean, it was a strike, but it's not supported by any major labor union, I don't believe. I mean, there's solidarity, but I don't think that like the AFL-CIO or the Teamsters have gotten involved.
Not that I'm aware of.
And so I think that they just self-organized and in a lot of places walked off the job.
Well, now I wouldn't say self-organized because I saw several articles about how, even from Huffington Post, that said this is, I think the term was used, moribund. This is one of these protests that could get the moribund unions back in the limelight and everything else. So I do believe there are unions out there helping.
Oh, well, that's okay.
But I don't think, but there's no official, hey, we're all going to go on strike.
Well, to me, that's, I mean, if they want to try and do that, I don't have a problem with that necessarily, because I feel, any sort of labor organization, that's going to happen if people want to participate, then they, can obviously participate. And that's, to me, that's not so problematic necessarily, because the argument is not necessarily even about the minimum wage. The minimum wage has been litigated and resolved in favor of having a minimum wage for the last 70 years.
Yep.
Now, and there's been a lot of data back and forth. There's been a lot of arguments back and forth, and it's going to come up for a fight if the president ever gets around to it with everything else that's going on. Barack Obama wanted to raise it to $9 an hour. Now, I know that you're against that.
Well, yeah. I'm against the minimum wage.
You're against, because you're against the minimum wage in general. But see, that's what you hear. You don't hear people talk about incrementalism. You hear them, we either want it or we don't. And these folks out east and some of these fast food workers want to get their pay up to $15 an hour.
Yes.
Now, we have talked about shocks to the system in other contexts with the tax reform issue, all kinds of things. I think both of us would agree that such a large jump would be problematic for any business, a shock to the system. But Doc, tell me why an incremental approach to get fast food workers up to a living wage is a problem.
Well, first of all, let's talk about, this fallacy of a living wage. Whenever you increase a living wage, let's say we take it from 7.25 up to $9 an hour. What businesses do in response is they don't hire, or they fire, or they begin to automate, or they raise prices, or in a lot of cases, all of the above. They might try to start marketing something more pricey, like since we're going to be talking specifically about fast food, the McCafes. That was a response to an increase in minimum wage. And what happens is when you start increasing minimum wage, you start decreasing opportunities for low-level employees. And you have to have that. Not everybody can start out at $9 an hour. And let's face it, not every job's worth $9 an hour. Dropping fries in a basket is not worth $9 an hour.
No, I'm going to stop you right there.
But it isn't.
No, I'm going to stop you because that's a separate argument.
You have to that you have to separate the job from the person?
No. What I wanted to address both pieces of it. I'm not meaning to cut you off, but
knock yourself out.
I feel that the economic argument is separate from the normative argument that you're making. I feel like if we're going to talk that, and that's why this gets heated.
Well, then let's stick with the economics.
Right.
Save your piece on economics. We've got a couple minutes.
Well,
left
when we're talking about, first of all, the economic data over the last 70 years does not support the contention that raising the minimum wage raises unemployment. It's just not. It's not there. It's either nil, zero effect, or slightly positive, 1 to 3%. Now, I read a recent blog post, and by recent I mean it was probably in the early winter of this year, by Richard Posner, the star district appellate judge over in the 7th Judicial District over in Illinois. Richard Posner is this economic whiz kid judge on the Court of Appeals over in the 7th District. He's awesome about economic things. Really, really smart guy. I disagree with him a lot of stuff, but he's a really smart guy. And he says that while it's not necessarily that it raises unemployment overall, and maybe you see a tick up in employment 1 to 3%, but it definitely hurts lower or more vulnerable populations like teenagers, women with family, like single mothers, and the elderly. What do you think about that?
I think that if that's what he said, I would agree with that. That's what I see in my practice. Of course, I deal with a lot of low-income people. A lot of them, in fact, the last time, about 9 years ago, when the minimum wage was increased, I had a lot of people come in and say, I don't have a job anymore. Now what am I going to do? There are people out there that don't have the skills necessary to get a high-paying job. And economically, I understand, part of my argument with unemployment, which we've gone over several times, is the way they actually measure it. It's not consistent over time. It does have a tendency to vary, and they don't count people that have been unemployed for a long period of time. They only count the people on the unemployment rolls. And as we both know, there's a lot of people off the rolls now that are still unemployed. So you can't really take a look at the numbers they provide as something that is going to be in the least ways accurate. The second thing is, when you raise the cost of labor, which for businesses run just about 30%, when you raise that to 33% or 35% of the product, then what you have is they will start automating, reducing the number of people that are hired, and therefore the people that could enter the workforce could have, some extra income for whatever reason aren't. And that's just what I see, and that's what I know, and that these people don't then get hired.
What I can say is that it does functionally make sense that a higher wage would cause certain businesses, not all of them, but certain businesses, to lay off some people. The resultant effect of the people kept on, though, is from a macroeconomic level is so great that it eats up. And this is what economists argue, that the reason we don't see catastrophic unemployment because of the minimum wage just by itself is that the economic benefit for those folks goes up. And if you are shifting workers from job to job that can afford them, creating pockets in other industries with different wage levels or what have you, because even if you were to take somebody from a relatively low retail job and move them to someplace else, manufacturing, for example, that's slightly higher paying, that would be a net benefit to them, even though they lost their job over here. And so we got
to take a break right now,
and we'll get into the normative side of this. What work is worth after the break.
Yeah, all right. And so the Polk County Republicans are having their fall picnic here, September 7th. That's just this Saturday.
It's this Saturday.
Holy smokes! I need to get my press pass. Anyway, and you need to get yours too. I hope you're planning on going.
Well, we'll see. We'll have to talk about it.
All right. So they're going to be having it this Saturday. It's going to be a great time. It starts about 4:30 or 5, something like that. They're going to have every speaker that you can shake a stick at on the Republican Party. It's a great time to meet and greet the governor and the lieutenant governor or the people that are running for Senate, Congressman Latham. I'm not sure if Congressman King's going to be showing up, but it's going to be a fantastic time. It's out of Jalapeno Pete's. It's got good food. A couple of years ago, Senator Grassley showed up, and that was really quite an interesting evening. So there's their website, polkgop.com, and their number 280-6438. You can talk to Daryl Carney or Ryan Keller, either one, to get your tickets to go. It'll be worth the effort. Plus, if you want a sponsored table, you can do that. Now, we're going to get back to what you were just describing, really is what we call creative destruction. And that's what economists talk about all the time when you have new technologies move in. Mm-hmm. And the problem there's not a problem with creative destruction, because I understand that. But the problem is you have to also understand that there are people that are not capable of developing those new skills in another area.
Well,
you're talking a significant portion. A lot of my patients have a job, right, putting a nut on a bolt, because that's what they can do. They're not going to have the skills to go out into a manufacturing position.
Here's my question then. If somebody, and so what are those workers? Well, that kind of dovetails nicely into the normative question, the morality question of what work is worth. Now, you hear this a lot from people, and you said it yourself, that flipping burgers is not worth $15 an hour. It's not. No. That's what people say. Well, not to disparage the administrative professionals who I know and dearly love around the state, around the world, and around my own household, but I mean, you'd pay somebody to answer your phones $15 an hour if they were doing other things, like helping you file, helping you do all kinds of stuff. Yeah. If I was going to hire somebody at my office because I need somebody to do that, to answer my phones, do my filing, keep my schedule, all that kind of stuff, I'd be hard pressed to find somebody who'd be willing, who is good, who'd be willing to do that for less than $15 an hour. Once again, we're talking in a pure philosophical place. If you argue that flipping burgers is necessary to a society because it gets food to people who want to buy it, and filing is necessary to a society because it assists an attorney who works in the society, although maybe attorneys aren't necessary.
I don't think attorneys are necessary.
Leaving that out of it, for argument's sake that it is, then what about those two jobs makes one worth more and one worth less if their necessity to the society is relatively equal? People got to eat. People have to have lawyers.
Well, but you see that's the problem. You have to define what that job's worth. Now, I'll be very upfront. Minimum wage, hike it or not, is not going to impact my business, because I pay my people more than minimum wage.
That's right. And a lot of people do.
Because there's three things that go into the jobs that I have. One, we're out front. We're a customer service, because that's what doctors are. We're a service industry. So I have to have somebody that can answer the phones, can organize my schedule, and has these skills to be able to interface with the public. Now, I will tell you, the gal I got is absolutely wonderful. You know, we never have a complaint about her one. Now, the other job that I have is my office manager. Now, she has a different skill set. Her job is to collect money. It's really tough to say, now, how are you going to pay for this visit? Right? So I get a lot of complaints about her, but yet she sits there and takes it all in stride. That's a different skill set. Neither one of these skill sets are people that make $9 an hour are going to have. People that enter into the workforce young aren't going to have these skills. You have to develop these skills. And if you don't get a job young, you are not going to be able to get these job skills available. Now, I will tell you, I advertised a job scanning my old files so I can be in compliance with Obamacare. Now, all I did is advertise at minimum wage, $7.25 an hour, sitting there scanning files. Now, all you have to do is put the file in the scanner. That's all you have to do. That job's not worth $7.25 an hour. It's not even worth $3 an hour, right? If I could buy a monkey without government regulations interfering, I would have a trained monkey putting these files in there. I had 32 people apply. A lot of them were underage. And the problem is, I would have loved to hire somebody that was underage, give them a break, but they have to sign a contract that says they have to keep things confidential. Well, if you're underage, you can't sign a contract. So, now here I am hiring this gal wants to be in PA school. That's what I hired her for. Well, obviously to me, she's worth a whole lot more than $7.25 an hour, but the job wasn't. And that's what you have to face. Let's face it, you have the opportunity and the option to leave a job and go get better skills. You have the option to get yourself better and to get more money. And having the government mandate getting more money, $1.75 up, that isn't going to help the people that really want to work. And it's not really going to help people that want to give jobs. If I had to pay everybody in my office $15 an hour, including the scanner, the bottom line is I would have to start not taking Medicaid and Hawkeye and the other state incomes because they just don't pay.
Well, let me provide the flip side of that argument for you.
You bet. Okay? We got about 2 minutes.
Well, then I'll start and we'll come back to it and then get into Syria.
Good deal.
You've been to Costco, right?
Yeah.
The one in West Des Moines.
Mm-hmm.
Huge, really well lit, beautiful. It is overwhelming how big it is, but clean, pretty decent. And you've been to the Walmart in Windsor Heights. It's a little bit dingy. I'm sorry to say, Walmart folks in Windsor Heights, it's a little,
and I agree.
It's a little tougher.
I don't go to Walmart. In Windsor Heights. The people at Costco make more per hour than the people at Walmart on average throughout the country. Costco pays their people more because like you said, because they value what a person is worth to them, and they pay accordingly. Walmart is one of the biggest violators, not necessarily the minimum wage, but of the idea that we're going to underpay our people. And they're on the record saying our margins are so thin that we can't afford it. And they're chronically the folks that underpay because it's their freedom to do so. When you have a situation where folks who work at a particular employer feel like they're underpaid, which means that they feel like they're undervalued, they don't care about their jobs as much. You see this in bars, you see this in grocery stores, you see this everywhere. If you're a place, I was a patron at a bar in town where the owner this is a bad owner. Let's not split hairs. It had nothing to do with the minimum wage necessarily, but he's a bad owner and it paid his people inconsistently. But when they complained about it, he would say things like, well, a monkey could do your job. Not to cast aspersions, because I know you're making a joke, but he would say that to people. Well, you're just pushing a mop. I could pay a monkey to push a mop and pay that monkey $1 an hour. When you feel undervalued by your employer because you're not being paid what you think that you're worth, you don't do and I heard people all the time, well, it's not my job. Or he's not paying me enough to do this nonsense. And that employer's establishment goes down, 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 because at the base of it, it's the workers that make
the establishment, not the owner. They're both necessary, but a worker will kill you. A lazy worker will kill you just as fast as an incompetent owner.
Well, and thanks for providing proof for my rebuttal to that, which is the
pay them more. Exactly.
That the fair market will weed out the losers. And
Nope.
that's what happens.
That's not what happens.
That is what happened because these guys are making the workers are making it less and less palatable to go to this facility because he's not treating them right, because he's not paying them what they should be. And at some point, the patrons go, "Yeah, I don't like working here."
Yeah, but if he's paying them more, if he's complying with the law,
but then we get back to
it boosts his business up.
But then we get back to it's not in the government's position to run businesses. It's the government's position to provide the framework so that the business can exist.
Like a minimum wage.
But the minimum wage doesn't help.
Let's
say he gives them seven. Hold on.
We got to go to a break.
We're going to be, man, we got to go to a break.
Perfectly, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, man, I hate it. I hate it when he does that.
We'll
be back right after the break. Listen to Doc and Lefty on webcast1live.com. I'm tempted to keep the mics on for this commercial. We'll be back
We'll be back in a second. Thanks.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershide.
I'm administrative manager
I am the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're going to do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's going to be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're going to do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed rider it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you going to say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're going to be listening. They're going to want to know what your challenges are. Then they're going to come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me. But is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though. I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm going to take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed rider, it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. You know, we probably should have had the mics on for this, and I'm surprised that our producer didn't, because I'm getting it from all sides today, ladies and gentlemen. Apparently, in 2013, as we've seen from certain government policies around the country, sticking up for the working man just isn't very popular.
But the minimum wage is sticking up for the little man. You know, you have to understand. Let's take high wage countries, Western Europe in general, but and Australia. Australia, down at McDonald's, they pay their workers $15 an hour. However, they only pay their teenage workers $8 an hour, similar to what we pay. Well, that's because even in socialist nations, that embrace socialism more than the United States, they understand you have to start somewhere. And if you're trying to pay some kid $15 an hour, that isn't going to work at McDonald's.
So is the worth better in age, or is it better with a family of 4?
What do you mean?
That doesn't hurt my argument at all. If you're going to pay people less based on their age, if you're going to pay them $8 as opposed to $15 because they live at home and a lot of their costs are subsidized by their parents, to me, that's an economic nullity that has a complete non-effect on the economy. It just, on the numbers of teenagers, it maybe will increase or decrease their participation in the workforce a little ways, because guess what? Young kids get older. Old people don't get younger.
Well, here's the other thing. When you start having a high minimum wage, everything goes up. Have you ever visited Europe? I mean, for crying out loud, it's $8.50 for a Big Mac. It's we got the English breakfast over there is $18. I mean, you can't go to a fancy restaurant here and have breakfast for $18. You can't do it. You might spend $10, and that's the problem with the minimum wage. That is a basis that drives up the rest of the costs. The more minimum wage you have, the higher it is, the more expensive it is to live in those countries. Because instead of saying, hey, listen, I don't want to sweep my garage today, can you do this? Now you're paying $15 an hour to have somebody sweep a garage. When in fact, you can hire some kid at $7.25 to sweep it.
Which sounds like you can do in Australia.
Well, you can, but can't necessarily in the rest of the Western Europe. Let's say you have some college kid who's only going to be there part-time, right? Suddenly you have to pay him $15 an hour. He doesn't have any more skills.
Why couldn't you do it on an independent contractor basis and work it out between the two of you and then make him pay his own taxes? You're talking about
you could, but
you absolutely could.
But here's the fallacy. Here's the problem with the argument you're trying to make. If you're a good employer, you want to have employees. You want to take care of them. You want to give them retirement. You want to give them benefits like health insurance and things like that. But if you're at $15 an hour, suddenly you're like, well, hold on. My benefit package is 50% of their wage. I've gone from $10 an hour to $22.50 an hour. And suddenly I have to stop and look at how viable my operation is going to be.
If you're a burger flipper at McDonald's, you're not getting benefits. And that's a large part of their issue.
Well, and I agree. But you don't have to work at McDonald's. You can work someplace else. To take one of the things I said in the break is, the free market will take care of people that don't take care of their employees, because Blake's absolutely right. You don't take care of your employees, they start getting grumpy. They start, doing things to sabotage your business. And, it just goes south. And at some point, people in the private sector who are visiting your business will go, yeah, I don't need this, and go someplace else. The second point is, when you have a bad manager, that motivates you to go get a different, better job, right? You don't have to sit there and take people's crap. I mean, the story that Blake was telling me, don't get me wrong, I like clowning around, but I would never actually tell in seriousness one of my employees, well, hell, a monkey could do what you're doing.
Yeah, you'd never do it.
But if I have to pay him $15 an hour for a job a monkey could do, I'm not going to hire. I'm just going to, well, fine. I'm paying you $15 an hour anyway. So you get to do this job too. You get to do that job. And if you can't get it all done in an hour, I'm going to fire you and get somebody else who can. That's not what you want. You want stability. So the minimum wage forces instability in some cases into the system.
Except that it doesn't, because the folks that are making minimum wage, who are working for, even leaving aside, trolls who probably shouldn't be in business, it increases worker retention because they're more satisfied. They don't feel like they have to go out and get a new job necessarily if they're making a decent wage at an employer. But then, not just then, but it also increases workplace efficiency, like you said. We're always trying to cut costs as business people, doing more with less. We're always trying to do that. And that is one of the gigantic driving factors in the unemployment issue today, is firms working on trying to do more with less and trying to increase efficiency with what they have, because they
automation.
Yeah, exactly.
Automation is a big killer.
Yeah, because they don't have the people that they used to have. But not just then. So say that you have a person that says, you know what, I can't afford I'm going to go someplace else. The costs involved in finding a new job, retraining that new job, intended on other employers is monumentally bigger. Those costs are worse than keeping somebody at a minimum wage. And so if you have people moving in and out of the system constantly doing, like you said, hey, we're going to pay you like garbage so that you have incentive to go find a better job. No, that's economic disaster, because all of those costs go into the rehiring process, the retraining process, the turnover. It's gigantic. How expensive for you would it be if you lost your people in the front of the office?
Well,
and had to retrain
it would be
them?
expensive, but the problem is people, that I'm going to have the final word on this. People hop from job to job anyway. Even before this economic crisis, people spent an average of like 4.5 years at a job. So that cost is factored into the business plan. But arbitrarily increasing your labor costs, that's something that's well beyond control of the markets, and it does destabilize the markets, in my opinion. Now, I respect Lefty's opinion. He's just wrong.
Yeah, except that I've got data and you don't.
I do have data. I have all kinds of data. I'm looking right at it. Anyway, we'll be back right after the break. We're going to get back on track with our commercials. You're listening to Doc and Lefty on webcast1live.com. When we get back, we're going to be singing Kumbaya about Syria.
Don't miss it.
Don't miss it.
Bertroche and Associates will provide you with a friendly, caring, and confidential place to find help for mental health concerns. We are ready for your call. We are proud to work with military personnel and their families. Our doctor, Dr. J. Patrick Bertroche, provides a full range of psychiatric services for children, adolescents, and adults in a forthright and informative manner while maintaining a casual, comfortable, and relaxed atmosphere. Our licensed mental health therapists provide individual counseling to children, adolescents, and adults, including couples and marital counseling. Visit our website at bertrocheandassociates.com for more information or call 515-334-9484. Our offices are located at 5525 Meredith Drive in Des Moines, just east of Skate North off Merle Hay Road. Isn't it time to talk to someone? Take care of yourself and your family. Contact Bertroche and Associates.
Welcome back, everybody. We had a really nice discussion here about economic policy and the minimum wage with all the stuff going on now. I guess the final word that I'll say on it, I don't know.
I just had the final word.
No, because
I get the final word.
No, we didn't, because we didn't talk about the McDonald's issue, like the $15 as a thing. Because I'm not 100% sure that any business could sustain that kind of hit. And so maybe $15 is a negotiating tactic. I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily reasonable. And that was my main point about the whole McDonald's thing in particular.
Well, the other thing is it's so expensive. The actual last word again
yes.
is in Europe, they make more money in Europe and China and India and Russia than they do in the United States. That's all fast food restaurants. But there's a cultural difference. Overseas, this is like going to Fleming's. I mean, it's weird to watch it. And these that's where you take your dates, and it's where you have a nice evening with your wife. And when you first experience it over there, it's really pretty effing weird. That's all I can say about it.
Don't tell Mac that we just said that.
Hey, I didn't actually say the word, but that's what it is, because you have these opulent McDonald's over there, and you're like, wow, look at this modern art and everything. So there's a cultural difference. Now,
let's go to Syria.
Let's go to Syria. Now, I put up a Facebook meme, or actually a thing that asked, geez, what do you think? I don't want to hear from liberals. I have about 10 responses from different people. Every single one says, no way. That isn't going to help us. Here's a meme I'm looking at Facebook. It says, America's broken system defined. 91% of Americans want no part of Syria's civil war. Beltway Bunch says, go eat cake, pay your taxes, and shut up. And that's pretty much it. That comes from Positively Republican. And they have been calling for John Boehner's ouster. Mm-hmm. They've been calling for John McCain's ouster. I'm calling for them. It's time for those guys to go. Well, if you're going to get on board with this, is ridiculous.
Well, while I agree that this military intervention, that's probably going to happen regardless of what Congress has to say, although I think the Congress is going to approve it, is ill-advised because I feel like military interventions and all kinds of these sorts of issues are ill-advised, at least by us. That's why I'm not in politics, because I'm not somebody who can push the button. I am curious to know, and I'll be curious to see how the Republican Party in particular, and the Democrats to some extent because of their anti-war past over the last 10 years, can square the circle of it was okay when Bush did it, but it's not okay now that Barack is doing it. Because even though I disagree with both wholeheartedly, there's no inconsistency on my part. I don't think we should do it. I don't. I'm sick of killing people. And I'm sick of having me as an American be responsible for it to some degree. It seems like the Obama administration is coming out and doing the same exact thing that Bush did. Democrats, listen to me. If you thought that Bush was wrong and think that Barack is right this time around, take a look in the mirror, because you're fooling yourself. You're lying to yourself. You're playing party before country. If you're a Republican who says that what Barack Obama is doing, and I've seen this, is a dictatorial abuse of power, you're wrong. This is the exact same thing that George Bush did 10 years ago. So how do we square that circle?
But, I don't know. And I do want to point out, I made that point last week, and you said, no, they're completely different.
Well, we had more information to come out. I mean, the whole fact that we keep having people say that, and like the UN inspectors now are starting to say, hey, look, when Kerry said sarin gas was used, it wasn't as bad as Bush because it didn't, they said nothing was around. And these folks are saying indications. There were like certain signatures, but it's not sarin. From my perspective, it's even worse because you had virtually the entire world that had a CIA type agency saying, yeah, we think WMDs are in Iraq, and Saddam wouldn't let the UN inspectors in. He wouldn't let them. That's one of the things that led us to go in there. The problem is the UN inspectors, Assad let the UN inspectors in and said, go look at it. And they haven't completed their examination. They found signatures that are consistent with sarin gas in Damascus, but that's not the same as finding proof of sarin gas in Damascus. And so there's the UK and the United States are jumping the gun again.
Well, and who launched it? I mean, this very easily could be one of those wag the dog scenarios.
Well, that's actually, from I was listening to a BBC interview with one of the foreign ministers for the Syrian government who made that same exact point, who said, well, it's the rebels that launched it. And the interviewer said, well, that's crazy. They don't have planes. It was from what the inspector said, it was clear that it was an airstrike, and that it was clear that it was some sort of chemical weapon. The signatures are consistent with sarin. They still don't know, but it's also fairly certain. They're fairly certain with a high degree of probability that it wasn't the rebels that were able to do it. That doesn't mean that it was the government, though, still.
Well, but back in February or March, and I can't remember when, they had a report right after Obama drew his red line, and you would think he would have learned from the Republicans. When he drew his red line, very soon after that, there are several reports that the rebels had used gas. And initially, everybody jumped on the bandwagon. Oh, we're gonna go get Assad. And then it came out, oh, geez, the rebels used the gas. Well, you don't hear that part of it anymore. And that's why I think Assad let the UN inspectors in. Hey, listen, come in. Take a look. Tell us what happened. Now, the thing is it an airstrike or a mortar strike? Or did they grab a Predator drone? Because remember, the Iraqis or the Iranians shot down a drone. And
but the Iranians are allied with Assad, so it'd be the same kind of thing. Because if he knew about it, that's a problem. But the issue is, and why I said that, and now that I'm remembering our conversation last week with a little bit more clarity, the reason that I said it was different is that, in my opinion back then, 10 years ago, was that what George Bush was doing was an abuse of presidential power. This time around, it's not, because
he expanded the power.
All right. It's within the confines that should be rolled back for all presidents, not just Democratic presidents.
And I agree. And I think one of the conversations we had out in the street way back when was, the powers of the president need to be restricted.
They do.
And we agreed way back then. I just thought, the Patriot Act at the time might be something necessary, but not something I'm willing to lose my freedoms over. We'll be back. Well, actually, this is our last and final break.
Yep.
So Polk County Republicans having their, what are they having? Their picnic.
Yes.
Woo.
This
September. Yep. You can get tickets at polkgop.com. You can call Daryl or Ryan at 280-6438.
And we got to move quickly on this one.
Yes, got to move quickly. And then, because tickets are going fast, there's going to be a lot of luminaries there. Also, I want to thank Blake and his law firm, Lubinas Law Firm. He's pretty much a can-do man on just about anything legal. So don't forget to look him up. What's your number over there?
285-0462.
All right. And then, of course, my office sponsors this show, Bertrosian Associates, for anything psychiatric, we'll take care of you. Now, back to Syria. Or do we want to talk about?
We should probably.
I'm not going to talk about the bakery.
You're not going to talk about the bakery?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
We can, but I think there's so much more to be said about Syria. Nobody wants to go forward. And just like the sequester, the Republicans are going to sell out so that Obama can blame us, right? Republicans get blamed for the sequester. It's Obama's idea, all right? We get blamed. Well, now that the progressives and the liberals have abandoned Obama on this, because you hear deafening silence.
He's gonna get half the Democrats. He's gonna get the Hillary Clinton Democrats again.
Yeah, but the problem is Harry Reid hasn't said a word. Hasn't said a word. You don't see Harry Reid going up there. You see John McCain.
Well,
you don't see Nancy Pelosi meeting. You see John Boehner.
Well, of course not. I mean, they don't have to. They just have to. All they have to do is cast the vote.
Well,
they don't want to be. They don't want to be out in front of this.
Well, no,
not 2014.
No, and it's just awful. It's awful what they've done to themselves. I mean, and I'm talking about the Republican Party. Local politicians I've been talking to have said, we're afraid this is going to blow back straight on us.
Oh yeah,
next year.
Well, go
ahead.
Well, what I can say, just if I'm putting on an analyst hat, which is a role that I relish but maybe am unqualified to do sometimes, is, to me, there will be very little repercussion if the president is telling the truth that this is a targeted, limited in duration, just no boots on the ground strike. There won't be much political cost for anybody, because it'll show. But what all the big name analysts and all the big name like Brzezinski and all those guys are talking about now is that if he does only that he said he was going to do, it's too late for that. That if he only slaps the wrist, he's not going to get any sort of effect. That presidential authority will be diminished no matter what, unless he actually goes in and topples the regime now. That he's waited too long. And so if this turns into another Iraq, which is what everybody's worried about, and the Republicans go along with it, then what they're signing and it turns into the same exact sort of with a country that's already weary, whose biggest ally, directly because of the Iraq war, voted down the first prime minister's war request in 200 years, directly related to the Iraq war. If it turns into that in Syria, then the Republicans go along with it, then they're signing the death warrant for 2016, and we're going to elect an even more left-wing anti-war president again this time around.
But it turns out he's not anti-war. That's
I know
problem.
that. I know that, but he campaigned on it, though. That's the thing.
He did campaign
on it.
And now the Republicans are giving him cover again, which goes back to, I think Drudge said it this morning. I read it, and I think he's right. We're no longer dealing with Democrats and Republicans. We're dealing with statists versus libertarians.
Yep.
And it's just incredible what we're doing. Bombing Assad isn't going to help. He's been fighting this war for 2 solid years, and he's not going anywhere.
He still has the military
solid support in several different key Muslim countries. Saudi Arabia doesn't want him. You know why? Because, they're like, well, we don't care. It's up there, and, we have our stuff. So the Saudis really don't have a bull in this fight. And why the UK and France wants to go in, I have no idea.
Well, what I can kind of say, what I'll suggest about Assad and about the gigantic international miscalculation The Obama administration missed it. David Cameron missed it. Everybody missed it. Not that I predicted it, because I had no idea. I don't follow this stuff that closely. It's not my job. But you topple dictators when they lose a large section of the population and the army. That's really the only times.
That hasn't happened.
That hasn't happened. He has solid support within the Syrian community still to this day, even though if we agree with everything that's been said about him, he's gassing his own people. He's waging this bloody civil war that's pouring refugees into Jordan and Lebanon everywhere, and the victims of these attacks are mainly children at this point. Atrocities are happening in Syria, and yet a large plurality, if not an outright majority of Syrians, are in Assad's camp still and view the rebels as terrorists and international interlopers. And if you don't have the people and you don't have the military, then the dictator's gone. When you have those two, they're still there.
Now, we'll briefly talk about the bakery out in California that refused to...
Oregon, right? Oregon.
I thought it was California.
No, it was Oregon.
All right, out in Oregon, who said, well, listen, we're a Christian group and we don't want to, do your cake for your lesbian wedding because we don't believe in that. And, of course, there was a firestorm of all kinds of backlash from the LGBT community, and it made the news and death threats, and I believe there was actually a lawsuit filed in there somewhere.
Under the anti-discrimination law.
And they lost that, so they just folded up shop and said, we're going to do a home-based business. Now, they had employees there, and these employees have lost their jobs. What I want to know is, at what point are you allowed to say, I don't want to serve you? That's my question to you. At what point does a business have the right to go, we're not going to serve you?
Well, there's a pretty clear line. If in Oregon, first of all, Title II of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 says that places of public accommodation, hotels, restaurants, those kinds of those areas that serve the public, cannot discriminate, cannot refuse service on the basis of race, national origin, or ethnicity. That's the standard. Then that was expanded with the Americans with Disabilities Act to prevent people from discriminating against folks with disabilities. And then state laws are even more restrictive on businesses. Oregon happens to have in its law that you cannot discriminate against people based on their sexual orientation. That you can't. That's against the law. They won't let you do it. This business decided to say that we're not going to serve you, and it's because that and they're saying it's because our religion says so. Unfortunately, there's no religious exception for businesses, nor should there be. And so if you say, I don't want to serve you because of some kind of characteristic of your protected class, it's always a protected class, then unfortunately you have to pay the penalty for that, which is some civil penalty, some civil issue, or because I don't think it arises to a nature of a crime in Oregon. I'm not sure. I didn't read the law that closely.
Well, but at this point, you have to serve everybody. You don't have to. I mean, if you're good business, you'll do that. But if you base it upon Christianity, like a Christian bookstore, what's going to stop the LGBT community from suing because a Christian bookstore doesn't have gay and lesbian books?
Well, why would they have gay and lesbian books in a Christian bookstore?
Well, because you can't discriminate.
But I don't think that you can't dictate a business's inventory or what they're going to sell.
Well, why not?
But when you go into a place like a cake shop and request a service, because first of all, at a bookstore you're buying goods, not services. That's part of it.
Well, yeah, but what if a gay person wants to work there then?
Well, why not
at the Christian bookstore?
Well, that's even worse. That's employment discrimination. That's even worse.
Well, but now you're talking a Christian bookstore having to hire a gay person,
and that's a different qualification. And if they say it's because you're gay, that's discrimination. Here's the issue, and this is what gets me so frustrated about this debate. If you are telling me that it is my religious right to tell you that you can't have a job with my company, that my religion says that you can't, I'm sorry, you're outside the social contract, because what it comes down to is have that belief. We support that. We say You can believe whatever thing that you want to believe. You can believe that the flying spaghetti monster says that and tells you what to do, and you do it. But when that belief system is discriminatory, we do not have to tolerate that. And it is not our responsibility as a civil society to support that kind of belief. And when I hear the backlash, which inevitably comes, that says, well, now you're not being tolerant of Christians. No, I'm being intolerant of their intolerant discriminatory attitude, which has nothing to do with Christianity. That's my argument.
All right. So let's take the opposite effect. There's a couple of LGBT businesses here in town that cater to them.
Okay.
As a Christian, well, let's say Ryan. I mean, he's a good Christian. Let's say he goes down there and says, well, hi, I'm a diehard Christian and I don't believe in gay marriage or the gay lifestyle, but I want to work in your store. And then they don't give him the job. Right? Now, is that discrimination again?
Is he going there?
It's
is
not,
he going?
because he's not a protected status, because he doesn't have protected status.
We don't.
So what you're doing is basically engaging in discrimination back to the people without protected status.
So are you saying that Christians in the United States of America have as historically vociferous, violent, and oftentimes institutionally supported discrimination against them as homosexuals?
It's going on now.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
No. Put my foot down on that one. Put my foot until I can't walk into a mall without hearing Christmas music, talking about the joys of being a Christian. Until I can't walk through a public arena without having at least the idea of a nativity scene tossed in my face as a non-Christian. Until I can't turn the radio 3 dials and be bombarded with Christmas advertisements for different things, we do not live in a country that discriminates against Christians. We do not. 77% of this country identifies as Christians. This is not a place.
But this is a Christian place that got shut down.
It got shut down because they didn't want to cater to a certain group of people, and they got dinged for it. Yeah. That's the market, buddy.
Well, oh, great. Now we're talking about market pressures.
That's the market.
Great. Now we have an LGBT community store that says, well, we're not going to hire Christians. Right? So now the Christian community can say, well, now we're going to sue them. That's what you're saying? No, the Christian, that would never stand up.
First of all,
a Christian would go in there and say, he didn't hire me because I was a Christian and they're gays. You know that would never fly.
First of all, you have not, and I should have done this beforehand, you have not satisfactorily demonstrated there was a link between the backlash to their intolerance and them shutting the store down.
That's exactly what their note said. They said that exactly.
Because they're playing the victim.
Because they are victims.
Maybe they sucked at their jobs. You don't know that. We don't know. The reason that they moved out is because they didn't want to face the heat. Tell me this. Would you ever let anybody push you out of business? Would you ever let anybody push you around? No, because you got balls and you're a business person.
But when the government comes in and says, listen, you're at fault and now you're going to be nailed.
The government didn't say anything about it. The government has a law. Because you can sue over whatever you want. The government doesn't have anything to say about that. No government entity is going to prevent me from I could file a lawsuit against you right now. It doesn't mean I'm going to win.
And that's absolutely true.
It still means you get sued.
Well, we went over, but at least we got a tirade out of Blake today, and we got a tirade out of me, which is apparently what our ratings are about.
We got to move those ratings.
And so thanks everybody for tuning in. Sorry we went long. We'll be back next week. Maybe we'll talk about the non-necessity of lawyers next week.
Hey.
Or how you can sue everybody.
You could do that.
Let's talk about tort reform. Do that.
Then I hope the next time you get pulled over for drunk driving, you don't call me.
Now he's intimating I've been pulled over for drunk driving.
Everybody hates lawyers till they need one.
Yeah, that's true. So I always advise everybody, don't need a lawyer. We'll be back next week. Thanks everybody for
Love you, man.
Hi, I'm Representative Tom Shaw, and I love these guys. Both of them.
Love these guys. Get over here. Love both of them.